of the special meeting of the Transportation Committee for Tuesday, June 24th. I'm Mike Bonner, and I'm the chair. I am the only member here at the moment, so this item, if it moves forward, may go forward as a communication from the chair. We have a single item today. Would you like to...
Yes, item number 1 on the agenda is an LADOT report and city attorney report and ordinance relative to amending the municipal code to accommodate special events.
Okay, to start with, before I do any speaker cards, I would like CLA and city attorney, whoever the relevant staff members are who've been working on this, to explain the key elements of this. And as you do so, when this motion was originally introduced by Mr. Englander with me as a second, it was, as I understand it, about food trucks and the problems with proliferation of food trucks in some neighborhoods and how to better manage that. And it was also originally set up as a pilot in CD12, and I know it has morphed from a pilot to a citywide ordinance, and it is now apparently about much more than food trucks. And so as you explain what the measure is before us today, if you could also explain that evolution.
This is very general. Paul Smith, CLA. In 2009, the City Council adopted this special events ordinance. And at that time, we had discussions to do something very similar to this, but we never got through the process of doing it. Food trucks have been an ongoing problem that we have not yet found a good solution to. The item you have before you today provides a way of approaching the problems of food trucks in communities. This grew out of an organic food truck event in the Valley. Both the city attorney and DOT have labored hard to craft an ordinance that would provide for reoccurring events to have a permanent, let's say for a week, if the event's on a weekly basis, it's between the hours of 5 and 9. Those spaces would be posted, permanently posted. There would be an annual permit fee for that. There would be regulations about how you would have to maintain it. The operators of whoever pulled the permit would have to decide what trucks would be permitted to participate in the event. What this does is, in essence, when you have a big event like a food truck event, you have folks who come and park for hours before the event, interrupting commerce, interrupting business practices, causing traffic and safety concerns. What this does is say, okay, this is going to be permanently posted. We're going to have restricted parking to certain hours and certain days of the week. So it would prevent the scout cars coming. It would make an orderly and efficient way of having those events. This is something that I think we should keep an eye on maybe for a year and have the department come back to monitor it and then evaluate its effectiveness at the end of that period. Were there problems? Did it work as was designed? Are there tweaks to the ordinance that would be necessary to make it more commodious to the community? So what you have before you really is a solution that has come out of something that has grown as an organic event in the Valley. And I think this has the potential of solving several problems that have come to the fore. And, well, actually, this problem was at the beginning in 2009. I think this is a welcome change in the ordinance.
Okay, I understand it's an issue in CD12. It's also an issue in CD11 and in other places in Venice. Having food trucks brings some tremendous benefits to a community or to an event. It also brings some challenges. And there are many of those challenges. This proposal then addresses essentially solely the problem of the scouting of spots and the taking of spots throughout the entire day, and instead says you get a permit, and if it's First Fridays in Venice, you get a permit, and instead of having scout cars come out at 9 a.m. and hold the spot all day long, you now have a permit and your spot starts at 5 p.m. and the signs say no parking except special event 5 to 11 or whatever.
Correct.
Okay. So it deals only with that one particular issue.
No, it deals with multiple issues. I'll let the department go through some of the various. It amends several sections of the LAMC to facilitate parking, to facilitate traffic control in and around athletic events, special events, especially in the Hollywood Hills where there's limited parking, and in CD5. It's a whole host of issues, and I can tell you how it evolved from just a food truck event. When the motion was first made, they had considered a pilot, but in reviewing the law, we determined that it really didn't require a pilot, and that there were instances where the athletic events and other events also needed to be recurring, and that it was possible just to simply amend the ordinance to allow for recurring events. There were meetings with CD 1, 12, 13, 11, and 5 on these issues because they all had different problems in their districts. During meetings with CD 1 and 13 and the Dodger organization as well as LAPD and LADOT, we had several meetings, and the Dodgers also wanted, as an athletic event, to have a recurring event because there were so many problems at Dodger Stadium, particularly on opening day. It was an absolute disaster. Traffic jams, people not being able to get in the neighborhoods were flooded. We had rowdy fans tailgating in the neighborhoods. Something needed to be done urgently for the Dodger organization, for these neighbors who are literally under siege in their neighborhoods. And so we met with CD12, and they agreed that we could expand this. They didn't have a problem with expanding it to include all recurring events.
Okay, so it applies to all events, not just food trucks. But
Right.
Does it have, what impacts does it have other than reserving, well, all right, let me.
Well, for instance, for instance, or an athletic event, recurring athletic event, the sponsor now, through the Department of Transportation and the Bureau of Street Services, will be able to issue permits to residents so they can get in and out of their properties during the event. So literally they're trapped in their homes while these events are going on. They can't get in and out of their streets. They'll allow the department to set up traffic control devices in an expedient manner, restrict parking in these neighborhoods during the event and just before or after the event, things that we can't do now without having to come back each time for an ordinance. It'll just expedite the process. We don't.
So in Venice, on a First Friday, there will be signs up on Abbot Kinney that will essentially be holding spots for food trucks, participants in special events on Abbot Kinney for certain hours of that Friday.
If they pull the permit, yes, that will be what will happen. They'll be able to pull those spots. The only people that can use those are the sponsor of the food truck event.
So in CD1 or CD13 near Dodger Stadium, what is the impact that these ordinance changes have there? It's not reserving spots for Dodger fans, right?
No, not in the residential neighborhoods. It's preserving the residential neighborhoods so that they can get in and out, so that they can actually park at their homes, so they don't have tailgaters. It takes the incentive away for somebody to tailgate in the neighborhoods because they're not going to be able to park in those neighborhoods.
Good morning. Brian Gallagher, Department of Transportation. The way that we see the special event ordinance modifications being used in the area around the Dodger Stadium, or perhaps even near the Hollywood Bowl, or other areas where there is special event traffic that floods out into the neighborhood, is that these are special events. The special event organizer can pull the permit to reserve the parking, and they would get special signs that would be in effect during the special events only, and the permit applicants could provide the permits to the people that live in the neighborhood so that it would protect their parking and give them the ability to get in and out of their driveway during the special events as a way of kind of bringing the neighborhood and the event organizers a little bit closer instead of just dumping all this traffic in the neighborhood. We've tried to do preferential parking near Dodger Stadium twice before, and it's always run into the issue about we couldn't do the signs the way that the neighbors wanted the signs to be. And by doing it through the special events ordinance, this way it gives us the flexibility that we need to only have the signs and the permits on days or nights when there are events at Dodger Stadium. There's also another application to this ordinance, and it gives us the ability where we have an event that's happening on a street posted with no parking anytime signs, usually in Bel Air or Hollywood Hills or wherever, where for that event, if we know that it's safe enough to allow parking on that street, the city will now have the authority to post temporary signs that say temporary parking permitted that would make it legal for vehicles to park there, and it would make it very transparent to all motorists what the restrictions are at that time and that day so that people could park there. This fixes another problem that we had with the current rules about parking enforcement relaxation. So we tried to handle several different issues all with this one report today.
Are there elements of this? Are there any other bullet points we need to put in the record?
There's also that we are going to be taking the parking meter usage fee that we recently developed for the valet ordinance, and we're transferring it over to the special events ordinance so that when there are special events and they post the signs that say special event parking only, and if it's in a meter zone, they would also have to pay the city for the potential lost meter revenue using the same methodology that we're using for the valet ordinance.
Okay. And Mr. City Attorney, just for the record, why was this, how did this morph from a CD12 pilot into citywide?
Because as we started looking at the various council districts and we started talking to CD5 and CD13 and 1, in 5 they had their problem with events they were having in the Hollywood Hills, and there was absolutely no parking. We had to relax enforcement, or we had to come up with other methods to handle those events up there. In CD13, the Dodgers...
So it wasn't that we can't do a pilot, it's that it just seemed wise not to.
It seemed wise not to. We'd have to come back and we'd have to keep amending to eventually get this omnibus bill that we have now that takes care of all the problems. We thought that in the end it was just far more expedient and to take care of everything at once.
And this ordinance has an urgency clause attached to it, am I correct?
That's correct.
So it's in council tomorrow. If it were approved on its first reading, when would it take effect?
Immediately upon council passage.
And Mr. Clark from the CLA's office suggested this is something we might want to review and see how it's going. Does this ordinance have a sunset or a review period?
It doesn't have a sunset clause. I think Mr. Smith is right. You can have the Department of Transportation and the Bureau of Street Services come back in a year to talk about how it's going, and then at that point we can revisit to see if we need to amend.
Yeah, it's just when we don't require a review process, we tend not to do one. I'll come back to that in a second. How many food truck event sponsors are anticipated to apply for a new permit?
I know of at least one in CD12 that's definitely going to apply for a permit, and I'm assuming probably in CD11 if you have a food truck event that occurs on a Friday night.
And who applies for a permit for a Dodgers game or an athletic event?
The Dodgers organization will apply for that for that.
They don't have to, though, right?
No, they do have to. I believe they want the traffic controls. The Dodgers actually organization wanted this, so they definitely will be applying.
But there's nothing in here that compels someone to pull a permit, right?
No, they are. If they're using city facilities, if there's the possibility that they're using partial facilities and it's being advertised as a special event, yes, they would have to pull a special event permit.
So if someone started doing something on Spring Street downtown, how often do they have to do it before you say this is a regular special event and you need to pull a permit?
It would depend on the event and what the person is doing. If it's an individual food truck that happens to be serving people at lunch, no, that's not a special event. But if it's suddenly 20 food trucks that are coming and monopolizing a block and it's been advertised as an event, yes, they would have to pull a permit.
And who makes that determination?
Well, the determination would be made by the Bureau of Street Services or the council district or the city. The city attorney's office can make the determination as well.
Okay, that to me is a problem because we just have 4 different places.
Well, it's been delegated to the Bureau of Street Services, so it would be the director of the Bureau of Street Services.
Has Street Services been consulted about this?
They have been sent a Rule 38 and were provided with a copy of the ordinance.
Did they comment back?
No, I haven't received anything from the Bureau of Street Services.
Mr. Chairman, also, one of the items on this ordinance is that this is intended for reoccurring events.
Right.
Things that happen over a period of time.
Right.
The ordinance says it has to be 12 successive events within a year.
Right.
So this is not for that
Right.
one-off event, special
No,
event.
that was not. That's already part of the ordinance that was passed in 2009. We were only directed to deal with recurring events and to facilitate better parking or better methods of traffic control in these areas.
No, I understand that you have to have 12 events a year, but at some point, things are going to grow from quarterly events to monthly events to weekly events, and I'm trying to get a sense, anticipate how this anticipates how we deal with something like that.
And that's why I was suggesting that after a year we say, let's take a look at this again and see how it's working, because the questions you're bringing up are questions that will become known over time.
Right.
How many? Who are the applicants? Where are the locations? What are the problems encountered? Do we have to make tweaks? Do we have to alter the ordinance? These things will be known fairly quickly, and within a year we'll probably come back with a report to your committee saying, these are the things we saw, these are the problems that are reoccurring, these are the solutions we offer.
So if an event pops up somewhere and they start doing it with regular frequency, and they are told by whichever enforcement agency, Bureau of Street Services, you need to pull a special event permit for this, and they don't, what happens?
Well, they don't get the privilege of having a permanent signage. They don't have the privilege of having a reoccurring event with one application a year. They can't pull the special event. I mean, food trucks are a problem. Food trucks are...
But what I'm getting at is, I was told they're required to pull, that someone was required to pull a permit for a special event. It sounds like they're not.
If they wanted to have a reoccurring event at a location and they're requesting for restricted parking, then to do that, they would be obligated to pull a special event permit.
And they may not, but if they're not interested in the restricted parking, if they're okay with scouts.
If they're using city facilities and holding it out as an event, if you look at, it's in the first part of the ordinance. Let me pull it.
Here's what I'm getting at. So as you're looking, this is part of the question I'm asking, is it sounds to me as if the weight of the benefit of pulling a permit is for the nearby community, whether it's residential or business. So for instance, on Abbott Kinney, it's certainly less of an inconvenience for the food truck operators. They don't have to send scouts out. But it's more of a benefit to the residents and the merchants on Abbot Kinney that their spaces are not taken all day long. I have faith that the folks involved in the Abbot Kinney situation on both sides are all good actors, but I can anticipate a situation somewhere else where some other entity, I don't know if it's food trucks or something else, decides that they're going to start holding a regular event, and they really don't care what the impact is on the nearby community. So they would have no incentive or requirement to pull a permit, right?
Well, the ordinance also has a provision in it where the captain of the district, police captain, or the council office can take a look and make a determination about the event itself. And I think that would go a long way in determining if the department, the Bureau of Street Services, actually issues the permit. If the captain says he determines that this is not safe, this is not within the public safety, in his opinion, this is not something we should be doing, or the council office raises a series of objections,
Let me try to ask this one more way. If someone is holding an event regularly that is taking up public parking spaces,
Yes.
and they do not feel the need to or the desire to get a special event permit, and the city says we would prefer you to get one, is there anything that can require the city, that can require them to do it?
In the special event ordinance, under
Subsection A.
41.20.1A9, it says that for the event where it's held wholly or partially on property owned or maintained by the city, that they need to have a special event permit.
Right. And it's also in subsection A as well, the sponsor of any event that involves the use of or has a direct or indirect impact on public property or facilities, or that can reasonably be foreseen to have such an impact, or to require a higher level of public safety services or other municipal services, including advanced planning services that normally provided by the city, shall be responsible for obtaining a permit.
I know, you guys are telling me what the rule is. I'm trying to figure out what actually happens.
Street services can go and shut them down.
Right.
If they're determined to be a special event and they don't have a special event permit.
let's say they get a complaint and they're doing this, and BSS Investigation Services come out, and that event has an effect on city services or city, they can actually shut them down. Yes, he's right. Brian's right.
All right, don't go away. I'm going to do some public comment, and then I may have some more questions. First public comment card is 54950-963. Is that Mr. Herman? Then Wendell Lopier, Donna Humphrey, and Matt Geller. Everybody come on up. I called.
Good morning, and for the record, I'm pointing out what Michael N. Fuhr on his report number R14-0276 dated June 17, 2014. As you heard, the conditions and the course of action based on venues of these, I call them or state illegal trucking, where you park and occupy space that belongs to the public. Please don't take me the wrong way. You have a right to park and use the street at a discretion, but the process of a permit and the action of the city must uphold to the standards and the conditions of the public for our safety, more so, and our health. As far as what's going on in areas of District 1, 13, and especially in 14, that's a lot of BS, that we continue to affect the health and welfare of the public. And I find it that how dare you deny the residents their homes restrictions to enter and exit at their home. Don't you believe in access? Do you understand that you're in violation of the rights of people with accessibility. I'm one in particular. I get blocked out from going through streets and I have to walk around. And I'm not the only person who's elderly. I'm not the only person who's disabled. I'm not the only person today who experiences the impact for the purpose of events occurring regarding these vehicles for food dispensaries. So the whole issue and my point today is, yes, it becomes a condition of detouring traffic control. And today, we, the public, demand better resources of our transportation and that of the city to control traffic control and use wise judgment and be reasonable.
Is Wendell Lapierre here? Yes?
Thank you. My name is Wendell Lopez. I am the Vice President and founder of the Solano Canyon Community Organization. This is the first time I've attended one of your meetings. I want to tell you that I want to thank all of you, all the comments. It's heartening as a resident to hear resident concerns being voiced and being discussed, and I see that you're working very hard to do a balancing of interest. Solano Canyon, we are right adjacent to Dodger Stadium. We are a very old community, founded in 1866. We are a small community of very, very tiny residential streets and very old homes. We are extremely impacted by this parking and traffic issue at the stadium. This is the first time in a long time that we see a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel for us. So from that point of view, we want to thank you and all your hard work and recognition of the impositions upon the residents. Sometimes residents don't feel we have a voice. I can tell you that I will go back, I will send out emails to my neighbors and say, no, our concerns are being debated at City Hall, and I will give them comfort as well. So I do want to thank you from that point of view. This measure, although not perfect, is a beginning. It is better than what we have now. We do need some relief, and I want to give you just two examples. As you know, residential neighborhoods, they have a rhythm. In the morning, get the kids ready. In the evening, supper, do the homework. A few weeks ago, two mothers in our neighborhood emailed me. They could not get to their homes. One left her car in Lincoln Heights and walked home. Another left her vehicle in Elysian Park and walked home. Neither of them could get to their child that day. They had to call and get their child picked up by others. So the need is real. I'm happy to hear the recognition of the need, and I just want to thank you, and any relief that you can give us near Dodger Stadium would be greatly welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Donna Humphrey, Matt Geller, and Michelle Grant, and then the council staff will come up after that.
Good morning. I'm Donna Humphrey. I own a business on Abbot Kinney in Venice. I also co-chair the Abbot Kinney Merchant Committee, which is part of the Venice Chamber of Commerce. I'm also chair of the Abbot Kinney Festival Association. I'm here to support this ordinance. We've worked for many years with Matt and the Southern California Mobile Food Vendors Association back and forth on various things. We've tried everything, and seems to be, again, while not perfect, we think there are some recommendations. The most comprehensive to sort of solve our food truck issue every first Friday. At its maximum, sometimes we'll have 60 food trucks on a mile-long strip. We have very small sidewalks. I'm not here as a gripey merchant about trash or this or that. It's safety. It is a huge public safety concern that we have. Strollers are going out in the street because they can't get behind the sidewalks. Our last committee meeting was actually last Thursday, and we had Inspector Alan Babin from the fire department, our senior lead Pete Upscarin from LAPD, as well as Sergeant Lowe from Pacific Division, to address this concern. Their recommendation to us as a committee was that we do a full street closure every first Friday like we pull for the Abbot Kinney Festival, which would obviously not allow any flow of traffic on a Friday night in Venice. Because of safety concerns. It's a very real concern to them. That was without them looking at this ordinance, which I know they will support. Again, not only does it sort of alleviate the scout vehicles and various other things, but it really does address the safety concern, which is very real in our community. There are a couple recommendations so far as enforcement, which is, a very real concern. We've worked closely with DOT on other issues, and enforcement seems to be happening more frequently. Matt and I have talked about sort of walking the street for signage postage, but the committee definitely supports this. Thank you.
Thanks, Donna. Thanks for being here.
Thanks. My name is Matt Geller. I'm with the Southern California Mobile Food Vendors Association. We've been working with the Abbott Kinney Merchants Association almost since our inception to various degrees of success. Obviously, the big issue has been control over an event that has been completely kind of came up out of nowhere. When you're asking about some of the benefits of this above and beyond just control, I think one of the things that it's important to realize is being able to place trucks where we believe that they'll be the most safe is one of the best parts of this ordinance. As Donna was saying, the clumping that goes on, 6 or 7 trucks all in a row on an 8-foot sidewalk on Abbott Kinney can be very, very compact and scary, and people end up going into the streets to go around it because they get frustrated that they can't move anywhere. With this ordinance, you'll be able to put 2 trucks or 1 truck in specific spots. You'll be able to extend the event farther down Abbott Kinney to really create a longer, safer, less compact, less congested event. For Abbott Kinney, I think that's very important. Another thing is the special events ordinance has obviously a cost. The trucks will be able to bear that cost with the merchants kind of controlling it. But with that, we'll be able to do things like, our association already pays for cleanup, but we'd love to pay for power washing. We'd love to pay for street beautification. We'd love to get more involved to make Abbott Kinney even a better street. I think what Granada Hills has is this great organizer named Mary who has really helped create something, but she needs more tools to be able to effectively control that event as well. One of the things that I think is really going to help, this ordinance is really going to help just with making people feel comfortable, getting rid of scout vehicles, and really making these events safe and fun for everybody. I think the last thing that I'll say is the city still needs, even though we passed this ordinance, they still need to support us in enforcing the areas that aren't covered by this. We don't want vehicles parking farther down or just close enough to be kind of loopholed out of it.
That's actually in the ordinance. I don't know if it's in the, when a permit is issued, the Bureau, or the Director of the Bureau of Street Services, the council district, depending on which council district it is, will be able to look at several criteria. That would be part of the criteria. Usually if there's an event like this massive food truck event, because of the traffic, and we'll use CD11 as an example on Abbott Kinney, all other events would probably be restricted within a certain significant area around there so that we don't create more traffic problems.
Right, but if they're parking on a side street?
They're not. If they're parking in our facilities in the street, no, they cannot. They'll be asked.
All right. The trick is going to be Bureau of Street Services being there, and that's one of my concerns. Is I don't think they're regularly going to be there. I don't know that they have the resources, and I think we are going to see as this ordinance gets implemented that's going to be one of the problems with it. And I'm going to ask, when we move this forward, that there be quarterly reports in this committee on this. So, Matt, thank you for all your work on this. I really appreciate it, and Donna as well. Thank you. Michelle.
Hi. My name is Michelle Grant. I have been involved in the food industry, the mobile food industry, since 2009. I currently own a food truck called the Kosher Pallet. I started a truck called the Grilled Cheese Truck back in 2009, and I helped to organize food truck events as Where the Sidewalk Eats. Under that, we helped the merchants of the 87th Street Merchants Association in Westchester organize their First Friday event, and I'm currently working with the Melrose Bid as they're trying to start up a food truck event. Overall, I'm very much in support of this concept and this ordinance. I do have some questions and some concerns, one of which has to do with the fees. Over at 87th Street in Westchester, we closed the street, and there are considerable fees that go along with that. The merchants and the trucks together shoulder those fees. They also shoulder the fees of paying for cleanup and so forth and so on. Any increase in those fees is probably going to make that event not cost effective any longer. And it is something, that event particularly is extremely beneficial to the community. right now. So I'm just concerned that the fees as they stand right now, is this going to cause an increase in that? Also, I'm also concerned in the same way that the folks from Abbott Kinney are concerned about enforcement and being able to have some sort of amount of teeth behind what it is that we're trying to do here. And the other concern I have is culpability. What culpability does the sponsor, whoever's taking out the permit? Is it someone who's a stakeholder in the community? Is it an individual sponsor coming from outside of the community? I know that's been voiced by the people that I work with to know that who's ever taking out the permit has to have some level of involvement in the community so that way they're not feeling like they're being invaded.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Nagel, a question for you. She asked about additional fees for a particular situation. She was referring to a First Fridays event in Westchester where the street is closed already. If this would not apply to a place where there's already a street closure in effect for a special event, right?
They've already taken out the permit for this.
Yeah, they have
We currently take out a permit monthly for the event, for a street closure, for a special event.
And they aren't charging you for that now? Or
No, we are paying for that now.
I don't think that the fee would change.
They won't even need to apply for this because they already
They'll
have a
a
special
recurring
event.
now.
Yeah.
It'll be a recurring permit, so you pay the one fee. And depending on, you would have to talk to the director. They'll look at everything, but it wouldn't change because you're already being, they've
Right.
already calculated what.
She's not going to need two special event permits.
No.
Okay,
You're good.
and I realize I'm over my time, but I do have two other questions because as a food truck owner, I do participate in monthly
And
events.
I'm sorry, we'll have to
Okay.
deal with it otherwise because I have to be in council in 10 minutes and I've got more
Okay,
speakers to go.
I just am wondering how that's going to affect those kinds of events, like school fundraisers and things.
If you could talk to us afterwards, and
Absolutely.
I'll deal with that as we do the quarterly reports.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, the council deputies, I see Christine Peters from CD 13, Sharon from CD 1, and Brian from CD 12. Okay, Brian, why don't you go first?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You guys created this mess.
I'm not going to repeat anything that the city attorney, the CLA, and the DOT staff has framed this issue and the solution very well. The one thing that I would add that hasn't been spoken about is the process of the current special events permitting process is going to stay the same. It's going to be vetted, through the community, through the council office, through the various departments. So nothing, will be drastically changed with this amendment. And we thank CD11 staff for their work on this and various staff members. And thank you for your consideration on this matter.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Christine Peters, Council District 13, Mitchell Farrell's office. I want to thank everyone here at the City Attorney's office, Department of Transportation, Councilmember Englander's office and your office, and Council District 1's office, the Dodgers, and all of our constituents. We have been working on this issue since April 4th, opening day. We had a disastrous opening day, and it was compounded with, after 20 years, the Scott Avenue Gate being open in our district for the first time, and it did sort of result in some cumulative impacts on residential streets that had heretofore not had a lot of Dodger traffic on their streets. And so we immediately started meeting with DOT and the City Attorney's Office to discuss ways to mitigate the parking issues in the community. Originally, we were looking at temporary permanent parking districts, which are the only parking district opportunity you have currently in the city, and those take up to 2 years to implement. And that, for us and for our constituents, was a real problem because we're looking at some type of fix in the meantime. And so we worked with Dee Allen of the Department of Transportation, who I think is here now. And I want to especially thank her because she was really thinking outside the box at this time and came up with this potential solution as looping our issues in with this ordinance amendment for special events. Dodgers have, at minimum, 81 home games a year. If they go into playoffs, there'll be additional games. So we're about mid-season right now. We've got another probably 30 to 40 home games without considering playoffs. So if this ordinance were to go into effect with the urgency clause, we could potentially see results in July and August with some temporary, special event signs going up to restrict parking for only residents. Our office is very supportive of that. Our constituents are very supportive of that. We have had numerous community meetings, numerous internal meetings with the city family to discuss this. Our first meeting was April 15th at DOT, and we've been meeting consistently since then. I have been tracking this ordinance with both the city attorney's office and Mr. Englander's office just to see that it's on track. And yesterday we received the urgency clause, which I think is what has raised some questions. Without the urgency clause, I understand that this can't be adopted immediately, so we may be looking at 30 to 90 days otherwise, which won't help our situation. It may help other people's situations in the long term. But for us, the urgency clause is important to get the ball rolling in our districts. So I just want to thank you for that, and we do support this, and however we can make this work, our office would be very thankful.
Thank you.
Sharon Lowe, Special Projects Deputy for Councilmember Cedillo, Council District 1. Councilmember Bona and I do appreciate all your questions. We have the very same questions. We're concerned over the urgency clause. Obviously, one of the other things is one of notice. This was just put out there yesterday online when we saw it. And we do have concerns, especially because the Dodgers, we've been working with them, as Christine has indicated, from CD13. We've been collaborating with them, trying to work out a solution and bring the departments together. I'm a bit perplexed that there's been ongoing meetings. My understanding from our field staff is we had one meeting on this, and there has been no follow-up directly with our office on this. So that is a concern. I know that I did hear the city attorney's statement. There's a question of implementation. And right now, as the ordinance is written, it states very specifically the special events vehicles are those that are related directly to the event. Now, food trucks, festivals, other festivals, clearly understand. However, as it relates to the Dodgers, as well as any other organization, especially the major sports organizations, for example, we have Staples or even the Hollywood Bowl, we have that situation there. We look at this and say, what are the parameters, the implementation? Within our neighborhoods in CD1 that are directly impacted are within Chinatown and Solano Canyon. And there, as it states, it doesn't specifically state it would benefit the residents. That was the intent. That is the scope. As far as no parking restrictions, yes. But as far as their benefit, getting a permit, how does that get implemented? Particularly in homes, in residences, in an old neighborhood where many do not have off-street parking. As you heard, our resident from Solano Canyon State, residents have had to walk long distances to park in front of, not because they can't park in front of their homes. How does it get implemented, especially since we have non-English speaking residents, largely Vietnamese, Chinese, and Spanish speaking, that would be adversely impacted? How do we logistically implement this? Plus, how is it enforced? You said street services would enforce in this event because it impacts City Street. Dodger games are in Dodger Stadium on private property, not on the street. Yes, they have an impact. Hollywood Bowl events are in Hollywood Bowl, yet they have an impact on residents on the street.
I need to ask you point blank, is Mr. Cedillo not in favor of moving forward with this ordinance at all?
No, we're not saying that. We support a lot of the intent, a lot of what CD12 has tried to address, a lot of what's been trying to address, and we know the food festivals are expanding. So this is a concern. We understand that. But in the urgency clause, we would ask, Dodgers are not here. It would undermine our efforts to work collaboratively with them. We have the issue again with Staples Centers, other events. Urgency clause, we would ask for it to take out the language.
I understand you'd like the urgency clause to be removed.
Yes.
If the urgency clause were removed, is your office okay with the rest of the ordinance?
We have some concerns on implementation, but I think as it applies as its original intent and as it applies for recurring events that are on the streets, we support that.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I have a couple remaining questions, and I'll do it quickly. Council offices or the city can put conditions on these permits, different conditions for different events, yes?
That's correct.
Okay. As I said, I'm concerned about some of the implementation issues here, and I do want the quarterly reports in committee, but my experience in the city tells me that if there isn't a procedural review required, one isn't going to happen. We'll have quarterly reports and we'll complain and do stuff, but nothing will happen. I'd like to see, is it possible to have for tomorrow in council an 18-month sunset clause attached to this ordinance?
Certainly, the council can certainly make a motion to amend orally in council tomorrow to add that clause.
And would that hold it up?
No, I would rush back and get it to the city clerk, a copy of it, but it was...
Because we're voting on the actual ordinance tomorrow.
Yeah.
I think it would be up to the city attorney and council to decide. John White, city clerk.
Right.
If this substitute ordinance can be adopted tomorrow, first consideration, in place of what's already on file.
Okay.
Right. It's
So-
not a substantial change that affects the ordinance. It's just a sunset clause to give council. So if it were some sort of substantial
Okay.
scope, it
All
would
right.
be okay.
So that to me is one of the things, and so my recommendation will be to move forward with that change and with a requirement that there be quarterly reports to this committee by City Attorney, DOT, and apparently Bureau of Street Services. As for the question of the urgency clause, what I would prefer to do is move this forward as it is, with an understanding that Mr. Cedillo may move tomorrow to strike the urgency clause, and I think that's a discussion that the council should have. I'm not prepared as a single member of this body to make that determination. I know it's a point of difference between two different council offices, so maybe those two offices can work it out by tomorrow, or the council can decide on the urgency clause, but for the time being, we'll leave it in. So are those instructions clear, Mr. Clerk?
Yes, sir.
To move forward as it is with an 18-month sunset and a quarterly report by the various departments to T Committee.
Got it.
And that'll
Yes,
go
sir.
forward as a communication from the chair, and it'll be on tomorrow's agenda.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.